Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Serap and I'm a user experience researcher. I recently quit my job, and in this video I'd like to talk about what UX research is. Let's start with the definition of user experience. We use the term user experience to define the interaction and relationship between users and the products that they use, their emotions and attitudes, not only towards the product, but also the company that might be producing that product. User experience research, however, is not limited to studying this interaction and this relationship. User experience research has a broad scope, and it includes basically anything about the user themselves, their intentions, habits, goals, their interactions with the objects and products, their interactions with the service and their experiences with that service, what they need, what their pain points are. User experience research also includes product research. It includes customer experience research. And in some cases, it might include market research, even though usually market research is a separate field. And market researchers, broadly speaking, do research into products' occurrence in a market landscape, market size. They do competitive analysis. But as a user experience researcher, I've done several of these things myself, specifically competitive analysis, looking at the market landscape. And I also have a certificate from Cornell University on market research as well. Methods used between these two disciplines can be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, these are both research disciplines. A user experience researcher provides insights to product teams to lead them to better business and product decisions. I mentioned that user experience research has a broad scope. In order to explain what types of research a user experience researcher can do at a company, I'm going to give you a concrete example. The research happens at different stages of a product life cycle. Assume that you are a user experience researcher working for a company that designs and manufactures wheelchairs. So they come to you and say that we want to improve our products. Please do research for us that will identify opportunities for us. So the first thing user experience researcher does is to understand who the target audience is. In this case, people who are using wheelchairs. But it could be the institutions that might buy wheelchairs in bulk, like hospitals, like retirement houses, airports, airlines, etc. The researcher then comes up with a plan. This plan will include what the goals of the research is, what kind of methodology will be used, how the participants will be recruited, what the timeline is. In some cases, this could include the cost. It should also include a summary of what might be known already about the field, about the open needs of the wheelchair users. This plan can be prepared in collaboration with the product team, engineers, product managers, but it can also be done in isolation to a certain degree. But the researcher has to share this plan with their stakeholders to get their buy-in and ensure that the plan actually matches what the product team has in mind. The researcher has to have a lot of conversation with the stakeholders to really understand what's going to happen. The plan should include how the results of the research is going to be used. A disclaimer, usually people don't ask researchers to do this research. Unfortunately, the researchers might identify the need themselves and go and propose the research. But the examples I'm giving are from an ideal world. After you get the buy-in from the stakeholders, then you start executing the research. You will be recruiting, depending on the type of methodology that you choose. We'll recruit either a large group of target users or a small group. Again, methodology will determine the number of participants you're going to recruit. In this stage, the type of research that you would do is very in-depth and detailed research to understand the user, understanding the gaps. You might interview a group of wheelchair users and ask them about their days, their routines, the things that they do, how they are using their wheelchairs, what are the shortcomings of the wheelchair that they are using. That's one thing you can do, interviews. You can choose a method called diary study. You might recruit a group of users and ask them to basically go about their day, but record their experiences and answer specific questions as they encounter certain situations. For example, in a diary study, you might give a homework to your participants to record everything that they go through when they have to get on a bus. And they would have specific activities and questions that they have to complete either daily or weekly, depending on the type of diary study that you designed. But the goal here is to get a detailed understanding of these people's lives, how they're interacting with their current wheelchairs, what their problems are, what kind of things that they might want to be able to do but they cannot due to the limitations that a wheelchair might introduce. And the type of research, again, the methodology that you're going to use here will also depend on the type of timeline that you have. You might not have a lot of time. You may need to do your study in a very short time. In that case, you might do quantitative study. You may look for data that already exists from other resources. You may be able to do a large-scale survey and try to get the information in a shorter period of time. After you collect all that data, what you do is to analyze the results and come up with insights that you can then report to your stakeholders. It is good to involve your stakeholders in the research throughout the research cycle, but sometimes that may not be possible. What you're not going to do is take what the user said and parrot it back to your stakeholders. For that, people don't need an expert. Anyone can ask people questions and tell the other person the answers that they gave. User experience researchers' job is to derive insights from the answers the participants gave and convert them into recommendations that the product team can action on. So it is really important to make this conversion and communicate the insights in an, again, actionable manner to your stakeholders. So let's say you presented your results to your stakeholders, you answered their questions, and they have a good idea after your research what are some of the opportunities that they can actually go work on. They may not be able to work on everything that you identified. They may be able to work on only one. Let's say they decided on one, and they started working on coming up with ideas, and they are working with a designer, and there is a concept of a new wheelchair. The researcher can at this point take the concepts, these ideas, and test the viability of these. They show some mocks, design mocks, ideas to the potential users and get their initial feedback and get a sense of their perception of these ideas. And let's say you've done this and the idea seemed viable, and then you went back to your stakeholders, and again, they should be involved in this process, but you reported what you found out. Maybe there are certain aspects of the design the people found useless or not as valuable or not that life-changing, and some they said, oh, this is what I've been looking for. Oh, I can use this in these situations, and I come across these situations quite often. And you give this feedback to the designers, to engineers, to product managers, and they go and work on it some more, iterate on the ideas, and then they start building a prototype. And then let's say there is a prototype, and then the user experience researcher could conduct a usability study to see if the prototype is actually doing what it should. Can people use it? If there are some features that needs to be discovered, are those discoverable? Is it easy to navigate? Is it comfortable for people when they are sitting? You can look at it from ergonomics point of view as well. And then you report your results again back to your stakeholders, and they tweak the designs based on the feedback that you've got and improve it. After that, let's say they worked on it some more, and then there is a functional product. But before they go for mass production, they produce, let's say, a handful. And what you might want to do as a user experience researcher is to find some trusted testers and give this new product to these trusted testers for them to use for a while, maybe a week, maybe a month, depending on, again, the timelines. And they would agree on using it, and again filling out some questionnaires and talking to you at the end of that testing period. And after you receive the data, again you report it, and then the team does the maybe final adjustments to the product. And then when everyone feels confident that they created something useful and usable, then they can go into production. Afterwards, after you release the product, in some time, then the user experience researcher can monitor the feedback and collect feedback. Maybe there were things that were missed before, and they report that to the product team to maybe iterate on the product, etc. So this is an example of an end-to-end process for a user experience researcher. The example I gave you is probably going to be a more complicated story. There will be a lot of safety, monitoring, etc. But I'm just giving a high-level example of a product lifecycle and how a user experience researcher might go about doing research. In this video, I don't want to go into the details of the different methodologies that can be used by a user experience researcher. However, generally speaking, there are qualitative and quantitative methods a user experience researcher might employ, again depending on the situation, what type of research question they're trying to answer, and how much time they have, what kind of resources they have. These all contribute to method selection. This had been a very high-level overview of user experience research, but there's a ton that I left out. I am happy to talk about this more if anyone's interested, but in my next video I would like to talk about the current state of user experience research and some of the challenges that we are facing. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.